Gameranx presents another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight-up gameplay and some first impressions of the latest games releasing. As always, I'm Jake Baldino, and today we're talking about Battlefield 1, a game that's definitely seen its fair share of a hype train that has also had a series that has, had some issues. I still very much remember Battlefield 4 and its rocky launch. So yeah, I was excited for Battlefield 1, but I didn't go in with massive expectations or anything, and I still came out genuinely really enjoying this game. This is a good game. First off, let's talk about the single player, because single player often just gets so left behind with these types of games, and thankfully I can say that I was genuinely surprised by the single player offering here. The campaign mode here is shockingly solid. It's definitely not really amazing by any means, but it's still just a solid offering and it's fun to play through. So the way it's set up is that there are 6 different war stories to play through. These are completely separate adventures telling small stories across the war from different sides. Most of those war stories average around 4 chapters within them to play through that are bookended by cutscenes and lots of story moments, and genuinely they're pretty well put together. While 1 or 2 may seem a little weak to some people, what you have here is really cool small short stories. It's like a big anthology on World War I, and I think DICE did a really good job trying to convey all different sides and perspectives of the war and just generally how terrible it was and how shitty it was and what it did to people. And you get a little bit of everything. You get to play an Italian heavy machine gunner who has to save his brother, a daring, dashing pilot who lied his way into the force, a general foot soldier basically living out hell itself, a tank gunner, and all these different perspectives just make it feel refreshing to play through. Like I said, it's not perfect, and at the end of the day, if you really break it down, it is kind of like a glorified tutorial, but the presentation, the way the short stories are presented, and just the overall production quality just make it feel fun to play through. It is very short. You are going to be able to knock it out in a few hours, but I gotta say, I just do really like it. It really does ooze quality. It has this whole kind of, it romanticizes aspect of the war in certain ways that some people might not like, but it makes it all feel very adventurous and fun and exciting while still keeping the terribleness of it. They did a really good job walking the line between that. It's just a shame that people will be able to blow through it in a few hours, but it's also refreshing coming from Battlefront, which didn't have any single player anything at all. That shouldn't be grounds for me to give it a free pass by any means, but the way I look at it is that I mostly play multiplayer, so to have a single player bonus that's this decent is good. Before I go into multiplayer, I do really want to mention the visuals for a second, because they're pretty damn fantastic. The recorded version I have here, I was playing on Xbox One, and for a console, it still looks really damn good. There's a lot going on, there's some really nice effects, the lighting is great and very, very much stylized, really kind of setting the mood and the tone and kind of nailing the actual look of the maps and the levels in the game. And the destructibility is really cool. It's something I definitely enjoy in these games. The fact that you can just blow up anything, shoot a shotgun through some sheetrock walls, or run over a building with a tank, anything you really want to do, you can pretty much destroy here, and I like that. While not everything is destructible, there is a lot of stuff you can destroy here to your liking, and I enjoy that shit. Now, in terms of multiplayer, it's very difficult to review Battlefield multiplayer because it's really about how it stacks up in a few weeks, maybe months, or even years' time. But the most important things, at least with a Before You Buy, at first glance, yes, as of right now, the servers are all working, they're all working up to par. And do I think the multiplayer is good and fun? Yes, I think it definitely is. It is very, very much Battlefield. It surprisingly doesn't feel too much different from your standard Battlefield fare. I'm also a little bit disappointed because there is still a reliance on automatic weapons in a war where there wasn't that many. But of course, EA and DICE had to make some concessions to really make it fun and still fast-paced. But I do like that single-shot weapons and bolt-action rifles do feel more effective here, and when you use them, they are really satisfying. And you can get by using them. You don't feel like you're at a disadvantage for using a bolt-action or even any sort of semi-automatic. You still feel competent and you can still hold your own, and I like that a lot. There's tons of vehicles and all the tanks really kind of feel differently, and also I think it's worth noting that the planes handle very well. Aerial combat is incredibly fun this time around the way they did it. They did change the way airplanes handle quite a bit. It actually feels like there's a little bit less control behind it, but it does still make it much more fun, and dogfighting in the air is probably one of my favorite parts of the game. The fresh new multiplayer offering that I enjoy the most is definitely Operations. Operations is a mode to find a match based on what type of war front you want to fight on and what specific battle within them. Matchmaking is basically like you pick a spot on the map and choose which front and what battle you want to go through. These are pretty much conquest maps. They're large. You can have 40 or 60 players, which always feels chaotic, but to me is a ton of fun. And the coolest part, and don't laugh at me, okay, but they're educational. The way it starts, the map starts and gives you a breakdown of who's fighting this war, why they're fighting this battle, who's pitted up against who, and what really ultimately happens. It just gives you a little more context that I like, and since it doesn't get in the way, even if you're not crazy about that, it can easily be ignored. But for somebody that likes to pay attention, and if you enjoy this stuff, it's there for you, and it's cool. It's slick. Operations is also really cool because the losing side gets like a last-ditch effort, like a Zeppelin or a war train that comes in that can basically change the tide of the the battle. It's worth noting, but you guys have probably seen already the fact that a warship or a Zeppelin can actually be downed and crash into the battlefield and actually change the actual level design of what's going on in the field. And then, of course, as always, there's Conquest, which to me feels as good as ever. There's Rush, Team Deathmatch, Domination, and then even War Pigeon mode, which is really dumb and kind of hokey. It's kind of a throwaway mode, but it's kind of like capture the flag with a bird. It's a nice diversion. And I know Battlefield itself is definitely nothing without its maps, and my personal favorites were the Argonne Forest and Perone, because not only are they good maps, like my favorite Battlefield maps are the ones that are wide open with areas of big open fields and some residential like town and building type of stuff, and these have a good balance of that. And not only that, but all the maps here look amazing. There's smoke effects, there's lighting effects, there's fog, there's flames, there's dirt, there's mud, there's so much going on visually, and maybe it's just a World War I thing, but everything just looks terrible but also beautiful, and it's cool. Progression is good. It's basically what you expect from a Battlefield. This time around you earn war bonds to unlock different weapons and different things for those weapons. Unfortunately, the way the menus work, it's kind of limited when you're waiting for a match. The only thing you can really do is choose which medals you want to equip. That gives you certain objectives to progress through. And then of course there are loot unboxings that you can earn and buy boxes or buy them with real money and then unbox them to get certain weapons and certain stuff like that. Very similar to pretty much like every game now. And you know, that's going to rub some people the wrong way, so I wanted to bring it up. But it all basically is what you come to expect, although I just think the menus sometimes are a little tricky to navigate. But thankfully, in terms of actual matchmaking, there is still the ability to narrow down and choose your own server, which I really appreciate, especially the fact that it's on consoles. That's a nice touch. And of course, I do have to acknowledge this game is buggy and glitchy. I'd say if that's the biggest con, it's going to be for some people, is just the amount of bugs and visual glitches. You know, I'll be playing a match and I do see a player go flying through the air. I have been riding a horse that gets stuck in a wall. I hate to be like this, but that is typical Battlefield stuff. We've been seeing it since Battlefield 3, definitely. Just chaos sometimes. However, I tried to pay attention and find stuff. Is there anything game-breaking, like in previous games, like in Battlefield 4, anything as messy and as bad as that? No, I haven't really found anything so far. But if you are the type of person that is going to get turned off by that, it is very apparent here, and it's going to bother you. But ultimately, Battlefield 1 is a solid offering because it does enough new things to make the game feel really fresh and really exciting from a single-player and multiplayer standpoint, but it also still very much feels and plays like a Battlefield game that you want. And the single-player stuff I do think is very solid. It might underwhelm some, but I don't know, man. Just seeing Lawrence of Arabia and all this cool historical shit just is really exciting. I think if you've been a fan of any Battlefield game, or maybe if you haven't played one in a while, you should jump in with this one because it feels different and exciting enough to possibly rope you back in again. So guys, that's before you buy. You know the deal. I give you some pros and some cons and some personal opinion, and now I want to hear yours down in the comments below. How do you feel about Battlefield 1? If you jumped in early and paid a ridiculous amount of money to get EA access and get the pre-order big edition, do you think it was worth it? Are you enjoying this game as much as I am? Are you a hardcore Battlefield player? What is your perspective? What have they changed that you like? And if there's any tweaks that you don't like, let us know in the comments. Let us know anything you want about Battlefield 1. I'll be down there answering any of your questions. I'll also be answering your questions on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well. You guys know the deal. Clicking the like button helps us out a ton, and we really appreciate it. And subscribing if you're new is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.